Welcome everybody, great to see you and thank you for joining us for Dietitians Week 2021. The team are running a question and answer session this week and it's going to be hosted by them, the team. The theme of Dietitians Week this year is food and mood, and thankfully many of you have sent lots of questions in from around the trust in various settings and departments, so there is going to be a question and answer session as we move forward for this video. There's a competitive element to it, so you can win a prize, and the prizes are, you can either win a blender, a food steamer or a hamper. Great prizes. All you'll need to do is identify how many different types of fruit and vegetables appear in the background of this video once we start the question and answer session. Make sure you watch the video right to the end, and you can enter the competition using a Google form, which the link will be circulated shortly by the communications team.
Thanks Brendan, hi everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Q&A event for our Dietitians Week 2021. My name's Laura Rowe and I'm the dietetic lead here at Airedale. I'd like to introduce the two colleagues that I've got in the room with me, as well as Julie that's behind the camera.
So hi, I'm Louise, I'm one of the dietitians. I work mainly with people who are tube feeding and I also do general clinics where anything can crop up.
Hi, I'm Johnny. I work mostly on the wards, doing mostly stroke and surgery.
Right, question one. Nicola from Therapy Services has asked, as it's been an incredibly difficult year for all of us, where does diet fit in? What should we be eating to improve our mood?
So my answer to this question, I guess, is with everything to do with diet, there are so many myths out there. The internet is full of all sorts of things, isn't it, about food and diet. Everybody has an opinion on food and diet, no matter who you are. So my best advice to you would be, look at NHS websites, be careful around social media and unqualified people, because there really is some quite dangerous information out there, particularly if you have a medical condition that has a dietary treatment associated with it. That can be quite tricky. I kind of got three things that I guess would be my top tips to all of you out there. A regular meal pattern really is important. We bang on about that quite a lot as dietitians. Complex and slow release carbs is a really important element of that. Making sure you drink enough of the right sort of fluids and having a diet that's really rich in what we call micronutrients, so vitamins and minerals are really important for your health and really linking to food and mood.
Colleagues have asked for us to talk to you about the regular meal pattern and the importance of it, which I appreciate is difficult for many of you when you're working shifts, and the slow release carbs. You've been hearing more lately about low carb diets. How does that fit into our thinking?
Right, so regular meals, really important, gives us a steady source of energy through the day. And carbs, otherwise known as carbohydrates, is what we break down from a complex molecule down into small molecules of glucose. And that's what your brain needs for fuel. Without glucose, your brain can't do all the functions that it's designed to do. And if we use up the glucose, I don't know, we've had a big gap between meals, if you're fasting, then that supply of fuel to your brain becomes compromised. And if your glucose levels in your blood become too low, in the context of stuff to do with food and mood, that can make you feel a bit anxious. And likewise, too much glucose in your blood, which can be associated with conditions such as type 2 diabetes, that can affect your mood also. So what I'm trying to say in a long sort of convoluted way is it's trying to get the balance right with the source of fuel. And that's where the type of carbohydrate comes in, isn't it? And you might see some of our very nice visual aids that we've got in front of us on the table shows some of the sorts of carbs that we have. And these different sorts of carbs get absorbed at different rates in the body. So we've got quick release carbs, which if you're into something called glycemic index GI, you might have heard of that. Those tend to be your high GI foods. And then we've got slow release carbs, which are the low GI or maybe complex carbs. Nicely demonstrated by Johnny there, thanks Johnny. But it's not all about carbs is the message really, that's just one part of the jigsaw. The things that affect the carbs are just as important as the carbs themselves. The two things that do that are protein and fat. They have a fundamental impact on how quickly or slowly carbs are broken down in your body. The main message really in answer to Brendan's question is Eat a regular balanced meal throughout the day with a bit of everything in it. You've got to have a combination of carbs, protein and fat to get our brains powered up, ready to do what we need to do, whether it be work, play, lazing around in front of the telly. We need glucose for all those things.
I did want to mention was cortisol, the stress hormone, because when our brain is deprived of the fuel that it's needed, it releases cortisol, which is a sort of long-term stress hormone, and it's that leads to sort of mood swings, anxiety, depression and all that sort of thing.
And that's a good point about the cortisol, because if you've ever had like loads of sugary foods at work and then you get that big slump in the middle of the afternoon, that all relates to the hormone levels in your body. So it's not just something that happens due to a fluke, it's an actual hormone imbalance in your body.
So Jane, one of our Stefanist colleagues, has asked about fluids and why they're important. Jane has commented that she drinks lots of coffee as it keeps her awake. Is that right?
So something we get asked about a lot is fluid. So it's important to make sure that we get enough. You know, we can get, common things like headaches, cognitive sort of impairments, tiredness, if we're not drinking enough. So we've sort of got a few props here to sort of show, what fluid we're sort of talking about. So fluid is everything except from alcohol. Recommended to have about 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day, which is roughly, a jug and a bit. And then other, you can get fluid as well from things like, teas and coffees, and fruits and vegetables too. So you asked about coffee, Brendan. So coffee contains caffeine, which is the most commonly used stimulant, sort of day to day. We see it on the wards all the time. Pretty much everyone uses it to get through the day sometimes. The general message about caffeine is that it's fine up to a certain amount. So a moderate amount would be about 400 milligrams a day. But that, if you're having more caffeine than, you probably should, then it can affect you mood, hugely. Mood swings, anxieties, all that kind of stuff can just exacerbate it. So it's fine, but within moderation.
I guess the other point, Johnny, is it can actually make you feel more tired if you drink too much caffeine, which is kind of like totally going in the wrong direction of travel, isn't it, of what you might be trying to achieve by having an extra cup of coffee.
Still on the subject of fluids, Jane has also asked about 400 mils a day, as that has been recommended. What does 400 mils really look like, and is that the right amount of fluid?
So you mentioned caffeine, so we just wanted to show you a little bit what that looks like. So we've got a graph to kind of illustrate what that kind of looks like. So essentially from that, we can sort of say that, you could have, for example, 5 to 6 cups of tea a day. So that could be, in something like a barista cup. Or you could have, 2.5 to 3 sort of energy drinks and barista coffees. But again, the caffeine content in the things that you buy in those kind of places are going to be a lot higher than maybe sort of the standard sort of teas and coffees that you have.
Yeah, and I guess another point is if you're having those full sugar energy drinks, that can really lead to these big slumps in your energy levels. That's another thing to watch out for, isn't it, on top of the caffeine levels? Yeah,
so some of the energy drinks will have like 50 grams of sugar in them, whereas the zero sugar ones, and that's going to be the thing that's going to provide that slump rather than the caffeine itself.
Yeah. And just to note, if any of you are expecting, we do advise generally to avoid caffeinated drinks. That's just another top tip.
Still on the subject of fluids, now that we've confirmed that you can continue to drink coffee, another colleague has asked about wine consumption and commented, like to have a glass of wine at night to help them relax. Does that glass of wine count towards your 2.5 litres per day quota?
So, like we said a little bit earlier, alcohol doesn't count towards your fluid intake. In fact, it's a diuretic, so if you drink alcohol, you'll need extra fluid to prevent becoming dehydrated. It can elevate your mood in the short term. We all like a beer or a glass of wine at the weekend, but again, common theme is moderation. It's classified as a bit of a depressant, so it basically acts as a sedative to suppress the central nervous system, which is why you get things like hangovers and feeling pretty rough and leery the next day. Also been associated with like other negative behaviours, so aggression, withdrawals, memory lapses, impaired judgment, all that kind of stuff. But the good news is that you can still have alcohol, like I said before, moderation.
To absolutely clarify, the next question did not come from me. It came from a colleague within the organisation who has asked, can we drink alcohol at all? And should we be drinking alcohol at all?
So, yes, you can have alcohol. The recommended upper limit for men and women is 14 units a week. So that's spread throughout the week. Have some alcohol-free days in there as well. So 1 unit would be, 1 small glass of wine, or it could be a half pint of weak beer, or a 25 centilitre shot of spirit. But again, the message again is moderation, and having them alcohol-free days is really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from fluids, we've clarified about the importance of drinking enough fluid, that caffeine is okay in moderation, and some of the side effects of alcohol, for instance, the depressant effect that it can have on us. But several of you have asked about individual nutrients, and what's the magic? The question is, what's the magic superfood that you should eat lots of to put you in a good mood?
So yeah, superfoods, that's a really good question, and there are lots of claims, lots of advertising and marketing claims about superfoods, and I think we all want to know what's the one thing I can do, and unfortunately it's not as simple as that, I'm afraid to say. What's most important is having a range of different types of food. The thing is that there are lots of chemical pathways in our bodies, especially in the brains, and lots of vitamins and minerals and other micronutrients play really pivotal roles in all of those different chemical pathways. So there isn't just one nutrient, there isn't just one food. So to start with, typical dietitian here, 5 a day fruit and vegetables. And it's true, and you need a range of different colours to get all the different nutrients. So you need reds like tomatoes, you need green like sort of green leafy veg, green peas, you need some purple, we've got a bit of a beetroot here, you need some yellow, we've got some sweet corn here, so you need a sort of like a rainbow of colours, and you need to be getting at least 5 a day, but up to 10 a day ideally. And it doesn't have to be fresh fruit and veg, it can also be tinned or frozen. You can have a mix and that's absolutely fine, because they've got all that, sort of lots of ranges of chemicals, especially sort of the magnesium and the folate you'll find in there. You also need whole grains and pulses and proteins for your B vitamins and your zinc and your iron and your selenium. So we've got a range of different whole grains here, and we've got some proteins here. We've got some animal proteins, we've got some meat, we've got some fish, and we've got some plant-based proteins, so like chickpeas and beans and lentils would be your plant-based proteins. Omega-3 is another of the chemicals that's involved with your mood, and oily fish is a really good place to get your omega-3. This is a model of some salmon, it's not actual salmon.
Thanks, Maria, for the next question, who was asked, what should she be eating for lunch to help her feel more energetic?
That's a really good question, and firstly I'm glad that you're actually eating lunch, because I know some people skip lunch because we're all really busy, but as Laura was explaining earlier, we do need that sort of steady release of fuel throughout the day, so lunch is really important. So what we tend to recommend is you need some sort of slow release carbohydrate ideally, such as your granary bread or some pasta. This helps you sort of have that slow energy release throughout the day and avoids that crash that's sort of more associated with your more refined carbohydrates. You also need some protein, so like some meat or some pulses or something, or eggs, just to slow down the carbohydrate release a little bit more and keep you feeling fuller and more energized for longer. And of course we need some vegetables in there, ideally a couple of portions of salad or vegetable, partly for all those antioxidants and the vitamins and minerals, but also for the fibre content, which can also slow down the carbohydrate release. So it's all about making sure you're getting the right energy release at the right time. So I think examples would be, for me, something like if you're having a sandwich, maybe granary bread with egg or cold meat, or maybe some hummus and some salad, and then having a yogurt and some fruit later.
I think, we appreciate everyone, has a busy sort of, work life at the moment. So, leftovers from the night before would be something, quite easy to sort of bring into work. And also a good place to go would be the restaurant. They've got loads of, variety of meals, some good quality meals. And at the moment they've got meals where, you can get your 5 a day in. So they're a really good and cheap option as well.
Yeah, I think they're doing that especially for this week, aren't they, for our Dietitians Week.
So a bit of a summary. We've learned that we need a regular meal pattern, including slow release carbs, enough of the right sort of fluids, and basically a healthy, varied diet to get all of the nutrients that will help our mood. But another question is, what else do we need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely healthy eating is just part of the jigsaw, isn't it? There's lots of other things going on that affect our well-being. I mean, just off the top of my head, we've got sleep, we've got your physical activity, what you're doing in your day, your levels of stress, how mindful you're feeling. I don't know if that's quite the right description. And there's loads of information out there, aren't there, to help you with that sort of thing. Mind is a really good website. I've signposted quite a few people to that in the past. I don't know if there's any other places that you'd recommend.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with Mind. There is if you actually go onto Mind, they have a section called 5 Tips to Wellbeing.
So thanks to our marvellous colleagues who've given us lots of information today, but there's a lot to take in. And if you're a man like me, sometimes that's hard to recall. What are the top tips that we could pass on from today's session?
So my top tip from the things that I've probably mentioned today is regular meal pattern with lots of variety. If you can get whole foods into that regular meal pattern, all the better. Trying to minimise processed foods as much as possible.
I can't emphasise enough the importance of the fruit and veg and having a range of different colours every day, and having at least 5 and up to 10 portions a day.
Reinforcing what we talked about a little bit earlier about fluid. The body can do a lot better without food than it can with fluids. So, by making sure that we're keeping topped up, getting enough hydration in. So, like we said before, your fluid is everything but your alcohol. Moderate your caffeine intake, and the regularity is probably my top tip.
So I'd just like to close off this Q&A event by thanking you all for joining us today and joining you with our competition. I'd like to thank all the dietetic staff that have supported this event, so obviously Louise, Johnny and Julie that you can't see. And I guess on the theme of Dietitians Week, I'd like to just say in my role as professional lead how proud I am of everything that dietitians and the dietetic assistants and our admin staff do year round to support all of our patients. So thank you everybody, keep up the good work, and look forward to doing something again for Dietitians Week 2022.
Thanks everyone for taking part today. I hope you've managed to get some useful information about how we can support you in your well-being through your dietary intake. Colleagues who have taken part and who have put this programme together are available for any questions or indeed further top tips. Good to see you all. Take care. Eat well.